In the labyrinthine back alleys of New York, amidst the urban sprawl and relentless pace of the metropolis, existed a small, unassuming auto repair shop. It was a place easily missed, tucked away from the main thoroughfares, characterized by the scent of oil, the clang of metal, and the patina of time etched onto its worn surfaces. Here, Jane spent his days. A skilled auto mechanic, his hands, perpetually stained with grease and grime, moved with an expertise born from years of practice. Lying beneath engines, navigating the complex innards of vehicles, he found a certain rhythm, a quiet satisfaction in diagnosing problems and restoring function. It wasn't a path to riches, the earnings were meager, barely enough to navigate the demands of life in the bustling city. Yet, the work itself, the tangible act of repair, offered a sense of purpose, a way to survive through honest labor. His existence was one of routine, defined by the demands of broken-down cars and the quiet resignation to a life unlikely to change significantly. One ordinary afternoon, the familiar sounds of the alley were disrupted. The distinct purr of a high-end engine, followed by an abrupt stop directly in front of the garage, signaled an unusual arrival. An urgent, slightly sharp voice cut through the air, inquiring if anyone was present. Emerging from beneath a car, Jane wiped his oily hands on an old rag, his eyes blinking in the transition from the undercarriage gloom. Before him stood a young woman whose entire presence seemed utterly incongruous with the setting. Dressed impeccably, her sophisticated air and expensive high heels clicking lightly on the rough concrete floor marked her as someone clearly from a different world, far removed from the working-class neighborhood the garage served. "My car broke down," she stated, gesturing towards a sleek, black luxury sedan parked awkwardly nearby. The vehicle, like its owner, was a stark anomaly in the shabby alley. Maintaining his composure, Jane nodded. He assured her she had come to the right place and moved to inspect the vehicle. Popping the bonnet, he immediately assessed the situation. His experienced eyes noted the telltale signs of neglect often found when owners knew little about car maintenance: critically low coolant levels and several loose connections. It was a straightforward fix, nothing overly complicated. The woman, however, appeared distracted and impatient, her attention frequently drifting to her phone as if preoccupied with a more pressing schedule. "Can you fix it quickly?" she pressed, anxiety coloring her tone. Jane, accustomed to various customer temperaments, simply confirmed he could, though he couldn't promise an exact time frame. With a sigh of resignation, she agreed to wait, leaning against the garage's old wall, engrossed in her device while Jane set to work. He focused on the task at hand, methodically addressing the coolant issue and tightening the loose connections, his movements efficient and sure. The afternoon sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the alley as he meticulously finished the car repair. Wiping his hands on a towel, he straightened up and announced the job was complete. Relief washed over the woman's face as she finally put down her phone. Finally, she breathed, "How much is it?" Jane stated the appropriate amount for the parts and labor, a fair price reflecting the work done. Instead of retrieving a wallet, however, she reached into her expensive handbag and pulled out a surprisingly thick wad of cash, pressing it firmly into his hand. The amount was far more than what he had quoted. "Just a moment," Jane protested, attempting to return the excess, "this is too much." But before he could refuse properly, she was already sliding back into the driver's seat. "Take it as a tip," she called out, offering a dismissive wave through the window. Starting the engine, she drove off, leaving Jane standing alone in the fading light, stunned, holding a stack of cash that felt disproportionately large for the simple repair he had performed. He stared after the departing luxury car, bewildered by the encounter, eventually shrugging it off as just another strange day in the city, unaware that this brief interaction was far from over and its consequences were yet to unfold. Jane pushed the perplexing encounter with the woman and her luxury car to the back of his mind, the thick wad of cash tucked away, an anomaly in his predictable life. He settled into his usual evening routine, the familiar comfort of a cold beer and a football game on television offering a brief respite from the day's toil. However, the quiet normalcy was shattered by a sharp knock on his door. Opening it, Jane found himself facing a man whose presence was as jarringly out of place as the black sedan had been earlier that day. Dressed in a crisp, perfectly tailored suit and holding a sleek briefcase, the visitor exuded an air of professional formality. He inquired if he was speaking to Jane. Confirming his identity, Jane regarded the stranger warily. The man introduced himself as a representative acting on behalf of Lisa, the name momentarily unfamiliar until the representative clarified she was the woman whose car had broken down that afternoon. Jane's caution deepened, immediately wondering if there was some unforeseen problem with the repair. He quickly asserted that he had checked the car thoroughly. The representative calmly reassured him there was no issue with the vehicle. Instead, he explained, Lisa wished to express her gratitude in a more substantial way. He then presented Jane with an envelope. A sense of deep unease settled over Jane as he accepted the envelope. His rough, oil-stained fingers fumbled slightly with the smooth, expensive paper. What could possibly warrant such formality? He hesitated, asking for clarification, but the representative simply encouraged him to open it. Inside, nestled within the fine paper, was not more cash, but a check. As Jane's eyes focused on the amount written, his breath caught in his throat, and his mouth fell open in stunned disbelief. 50 million won. The sum was staggering, an amount so vast it seemed unreal, far beyond anything he had ever possessed or even realistically dreamed of. Are you kidding? He stammered, the words barely audible. The representative, his voice steady and confident, assured him it was entirely serious. He reiterated Lisa's motivation. She placed immense value on sincere kindness offered without expectation of reward. Jane stared at the check, then at the impassive face of the man before him, suspicion warring with the dizzying possibility the check represented. He protested that he had merely fixed a car, a simple job, certainly nothing deserving such an astronomical payment. The representative offered a faint smile, repeating that Ms. Yoon valued integrity highly. The visitor departed, leaving Jane standing alone in his small living space, the check feeling heavy and potent in his hand. 50 million won. It was a figure that resonated with the weight of potential transformation. With that money, decades of debt could vanish overnight. His dilapidated garage, filled with aging tools and marked by peeling paint, could be revitalized, transformed into the efficient workshop he sometimes allowed himself to imagine in fleeting daydreams. It was enough to not just survive, but perhaps even to build something bigger, something lasting. Yet, a profound skepticism gnawed at him. His life experience had taught him that such windfalls rarely came without strings attached. Rich people, in his understanding, did not simply give away fortunes for minor acts of decency. There had to be a catch, a hidden motive he couldn't yet perceive. This wasn't just gratitude, it felt like the beginning of something complex and potentially dangerous. Sleep offered little escape as his mind churned, grappling with the implications of the check and the enigma of Lisa. The following morning, still lost in thought and nursing his uncertainty, Jane was startled by the sound of another expensive vehicle pulling up outside the garage. It was a black luxury SUV this time, and stepping out was Lisa herself. But her demeanor today was markedly different. Gone was the flustered impatience of the previous afternoon. She moved with confidence and poise, dressed in stylish business attire that underscored her authority. She seemed entirely comfortable, even commanding, in the morning sunlight. Jane, instinctively wiping his hands, greeted her with surprise. Requesting he call her Lisa, she explained with a small, friendly smile that she wanted to thank him properly, in person. Jane, still grappling with the 50 million won, couldn't hide his confusion, questioning if the check hadn't been sufficient thanks. Lisa's smile remained, but her eyes held a serious glint. She stated that trust wasn't easily earned, but she believed he was special, someone trustworthy. Jane, crossing his arms, didn't attempt to hide his wariness. He pressed her for honesty, stating plainly that wealthy individuals didn't typically throw money away without reason. What did she truly want from him? Instead of answering directly, Lisa began to slowly walk around the garage, her sharp eyes taking in every detail, the old tools, the greasy floor, the signs of long, hard use. She inquired how long he had been working there, acknowledging his evident skill while noting the challenging conditions. Jane reiterated his stance, auto repair wasn't lucrative, but he did it because he loved the work, not for the money. Stopping before him, Lisa met his gaze directly. What if, she proposed, she could change everything? She then laid out her astonishing offer, an investment. Not just a gift, but a formal proposal to fund a complete overhaul of his business. She envisioned upgrading the garage with state-of-the-art equipment, expanding its scale, transforming it from a simple neighborhood repair shop into a specialized, high-quality service center for the entire area. Jane was rendered speechless, the scope of her proposal far exceeding even the possibility presented by the check. "Are you kidding?" he managed again, demanding to know why she would choose him, an ordinary mechanic, for such a significant venture. Her answer was direct: she trusted his character. His actions the previous day, choosing honesty over exploiting her ignorance, proved his ethical foundation. That integrity, she asserted, was precisely what she wanted to invest in. She wasn't just investing in a garage, she was investing in him. Jane remained silent, overwhelmed. Her words felt impossibly optimistic. He looked around at the familiar, worn state of his garage, a stark contrast to the gleaming future she described. He expressed his reluctance to be indebted, but Lisa smoothly reframed the offer as a partnership. He would remain the owner, she would simply provide the capital and opportunity for growth. Crucially, she assured him the choice was his, he could decline if he wished. The opportunity was immense, almost terrifying, representing a leap into a world utterly foreign to him. Seeing his hesitation, Lisa made one final, intriguing suggestion. She mentioned a meeting with her business partners that evening at an exclusive rooftop restaurant. If he truly wanted to understand her world, the world this partnership could potentially open for him, he should come. With that, she departed, leaving Jane standing amidst his old tools, more confused and conflicted than ever, facing a decision that could irrevocably alter the course of his life. The weight of possibility now rested heavily upon him, demanding consideration. That evening, the weight of Lisa's proposal and her intriguing invitation pressed heavily on Jane. The sheer scale of the investment, coupled with the lingering disbelief about her motives, created a vortex of confusion. Yet, beneath the skepticism, a spark of curiosity had been ignited. What was Lisa's world truly like? What drove a woman of such apparent means to invest not just money, but personal belief, in a struggling mechanic she barely knew? After much internal debate, sorting through his meager wardrobe for the only presentable shirt he owned, Jane made his decision. He climbed into his old, reliable car and navigated towards the address Lisa had texted him, a destination far removed from his usual haunts. The venue for the party was the rooftop of one of New York's most opulent hotels, a pinnacle of luxury he had only glimpsed from afar. Stepping out of the elevator, Jane felt as though he had crossed an invisible threshold into another dimension. The atmosphere hummed with a sophisticated energy entirely foreign to him. Gleaming crystal glasses clinked, filled with champagne. Men in exquisitely tailored suits and women in expensive, elegant dresses conversed in low, confident tones. The panoramic view of the glittering city skyline served as a breathtaking backdrop to a scene of effortless wealth and influence. Jane stood awkwardly near the entrance, feeling acutely self-conscious, his simple attire and rough hands marking him as an outsider. He instinctively tried to shrink back, overwhelmed by the sheer luxury and the palpable sense of power that permeated the air. Just as his discomfort threatened to send him retreating back to the elevator, a familiar voice cut through the ambient murmur. "You're here." Turning, he saw Lisa approaching, a vision of grace and composure. Tonight, she wore an elegant black dress, her hair styled impeccably, adorned with sparkling earrings. The easy confidence she projected only amplified Jane's feeling of being utterly out of his depth. There was a hint of amusement in her eyes as she observed his nervousness, asking how he was finding the event. Jane answered honestly, admitting he didn't feel like he belonged. Lisa laughed lightly, suggesting it was simply a good opportunity to get accustomed to it. She then took him under her wing, guiding him through the crowd, introducing him to a succession of individuals whose names and titles blurred together: entrepreneurs, investors, influential figures in the complex world of business and finance. Jane tried his best to appear composed, nodding politely, but his mind struggled to keep pace. The conversation swirling around him revolved around multi-million-dollar projects, complex market strategies, and billion-won deals, concepts far removed from the practical realities of engine diagnostics and oil changes. He felt like an imposter, a simple mechanic adrift in an ocean of high finance and corporate power plays. At one point, an older man, identified as one of Lisa's key partners, approached him directly. With a knowing look, the man remarked on Jane being the one Lisa had chosen for her latest investment. Caught off guard, Jane clarified that nothing was finalized yet. The partner chuckled, his expression conveying that Lisa's decisions carried significant weight. He inquired about Jane's thoughts on her proposal, adding pointedly that many would covet such an opportunity, as Lisa was highly selective in her ventures. Jane glanced towards Lisa across the room and saw her watching him intently. Taking a deep breath, he confessed his uncertainty about being the right fit, reiterating his status as just an ordinary mechanic. The partner merely smiled, reiterating that catching Lisa's attention was no small feat. The interaction left Jane feeling even more unsettled. Unable to concentrate on the surrounding festivities, he quietly slipped away to an outdoor balcony, seeking a moment of quiet reflection in the cool night air. As he gazed out at the sprawling city lights below, trying to untangle the confusing thoughts in his head, Lisa appeared beside him. Sensing his turmoil, she asked what he was thinking. Jane confessed his bewilderment, questioning if he truly belonged in situations like this. Lisa surprised him by admitting she had once asked herself the same question. Seeing his raised eyebrows, she looked out towards the distant city lights and shared a piece of her own history. She revealed she wasn't born into wealth, her family had been poor, working class. Her father, she explained, had been an auto mechanic, much like Jane himself. Her journey to her current position had been fraught with struggle. This revelation struck a chord with Jane, bridging the vast gap he perceived between them. Lisa continued, stating her firm belief that opportunities aren't simply found, they must be actively created. The crucial question, she asserted, wasn't about his worthiness, but about his readiness to seize the chance being offered. Her unexpected vulnerability and shared connection resonated deeply. Jane looked at the city below, then back at Lisa, whose eyes now held only sincerity. He asked the question that had been burning within him: if he agreed to this partnership, what did she truly expect from him? Her answer solidified his decision. She spoke not of profit margins or market share, but of creating something meaningful. Her vision extended beyond merely upgrading his garage. She wanted to transform it into a vocational training center, a place where young people from difficult backgrounds could acquire practical skills and build better futures. She wanted to invest in people, not just a business. This articulation of purpose, focusing on community impact and human potential, cut through Jane's remaining doubts. It aligned with a latent desire within him, something more profound than just fixing cars. Letting out a long breath, he asked what the next step would be if he agreed. With a slight smile, Lisa stated she would visit his garage the very next morning to begin planning. After a final moment of hesitation, Jane nodded his assent. It was time, he realized, to step beyond the familiar confines of his comfort zone. True to her word, Lisa arrived promptly at 9 a.m. the following day. Dressed casually in jeans and a simple shirt, she seemed more approachable, ready to work. She carried a bundle of papers which she unrolled on his old workbench, detailed blueprints and meticulously calculated plans for the garage's renovation. Construction teams were ready, new equipment lists were prepared, and system upgrades were outlined. Her efficiency was remarkable. The partnership was transitioning into action almost instantaneously. She clarified their roles: she would handle the investment and overall strategy, while he would oversee the technical operations, maintaining his working methods but enhanced with better tools. Just as the initial phase of the renovation commenced, with construction crews arriving and the tangible signs of change beginning to appear, the first note of discord sounded. Mark, a fellow mechanic from the neighborhood known for his traditional ways and resistance to change, appeared at the garage entrance. His expression was a mixture of suspicion and derision. He bluntly asked Jane if he was taking money from her, Lisa, to turn his humble shop into some kind of fancy, high-end establishment. Mark cynically warned Jane that he was merely being used for image, predicting that the wealthy woman would soon tire of her project and leave Jane with nothing but broken promises. The renovation had begun, the partnership forged, but Mark's words served as an immediate, stark reminder that this path forward would likely face resistance from those invested in the status quo. Despite the shadow of Mark's cynicism, the renovation of Jane's garage proceeded with remarkable speed and efficiency, fueled by Lisa's investment and meticulous planning. Within a month, the transformation was startling. The once dim and cluttered space, marked by years of accumulated grime and makeshift repairs, was now unrecognizable. Old, crumbling walls were replaced or reinforced, coated in fresh paint that brightened the interior. The stained concrete floor was paved over with clean, durable tiles. Most significantly, gleaming new equipment, hydraulic lifts, advanced diagnostic tools, modern workstations, replaced the aging tools Jane had relied on for so long. A brand new sign proudly announced the establishment's new identity, Jane Auto Service Center. The physical metamorphosis was complete, a tangible symbol of the partnership and the opportunity Jane had cautiously embraced. However, the gleaming facade couldn't entirely dispel the ingrained skepticism within the local community. The rapid, expensive overhaul attracted considerable attention, sparking a mixture of curiosity and doubt among neighbors and longtime patrons. Some passers-by would stop and stare, murmuring about the sudden influx of money and the unfamiliar sophistication of the setup. A few loyal customers, accustomed to Jane's previous, more basic operation, expressed their reservations directly. They questioned the necessity of such modern equipment for the typical repairs needed in their neighborhood, perhaps subtly hinting at concerns over potentially higher prices or a shift away from the familiar, traditional approach they valued. Jane fielded these comments with quiet patience, understanding their perspective rooted in long-standing habit and perhaps a touch of his own prior wariness. He simply smiled and focused on the work, knowing that demonstrating the value of the changes would be more effective than arguing against entrenched opinions. Throughout this period, Lisa remained a consistent, guiding presence. Her involvement extended far beyond merely providing capital. She frequently visited the site, overseeing the final stages of the renovation, discussing operational details with Jane, and ensuring every aspect aligned with her vision. It became increasingly clear to Jane that she possessed not only business acumen but also a genuine commitment to the project's success and a clear, forward-thinking perspective. One afternoon, as the center was settling into its new operational rhythm, Lisa arrived carrying another set of documents. She found Jane working, gestured for him to take a break, and laid the papers out on a clean workbench. She announced she had been planning the next crucial step for their venture. Jane, wiping grease from his hands, looked at her expectantly. With a serious yet purposeful expression, Lisa unveiled the core of her long-term vision, the idea she had touched upon during their decisive conversation at the rooftop party. She proposed formally transforming the Jane Auto Service Center into something more profound, a dedicated vocational training center. Her rationale was compelling. Jane possessed invaluable practical skills and years of experience. While the upgraded center could function successfully as a high-quality repair shop, its potential impact could be far greater. Why not leverage his expertise, she argued, to teach young people from the surrounding area, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds who lacked access to quality education or promising career paths? By equipping them with tangible, in-demand skills in auto repair, they could not only provide these youths with jobs and livelihoods but also contribute meaningfully to the development and upliftment of the entire community. It was an investment in human potential, a way to create opportunity where it was desperately needed, echoing the chance she wished her own mechanic father had received. Jane listened intently, flipping through the detailed plans Lisa had prepared. The concept wasn't entirely alien, fleeting thoughts about mentoring a young apprentice had crossed his mind over the years. But the idea of establishing a formal training program, of becoming a teacher and a leader, felt daunting. He saw himself as a mechanic, someone who worked with engines and tools, not someone who guided and molded young minds. He voiced his hesitation, acknowledging the nobility of the idea but questioning his own capability to execute it. Lisa didn't pressure him. She leaned forward, her gaze steady, acknowledging his concerns but gently reminding him of his own past. Would his life have been different, she asked, if someone had offered him a similar opportunity when he was young and struggling? She wasn't asking him to be a perfect educator overnight, merely to be willing to try, to share his knowledge. The appeal to his own history, combined with the undeniable potential for positive community impact, resonated deeply. After a moment of contemplation, weighing his self-doubt against the inspiring vision Lisa presented, Jane agreed. He would try, though he made no promises of instant success. Lisa simply smiled, assuring him they would take it one step at a time. A few weeks later, the first cohort of trainees arrived at the Jane Auto Service Center. They were, as Lisa had envisioned, mostly young people from the neighborhood, hailing from poor, working-class families. Many carried the quiet burdens of limited opportunities and uncertain futures. Jane observed them, recognizing echoes of his own youth in their mixture of awkwardness, underlying anxiety, and palpable eagerness to learn something valuable. He felt a surge of responsibility, a commitment to offering them the chance he never had. He began the training process patiently, starting with the absolute fundamentals: engine components, basic maintenance like oil changes, simple troubleshooting techniques. The initial sessions were challenging. Many trainees were clumsy with tools, unfamiliar with the technical language. Yet, their focus and desire to learn were evident, and they absorbed the information faster than Jane had anticipated. He found a surprising rhythm in teaching, a different kind of satisfaction in seeing understanding dawn in their eyes. This nascent sense of purpose, however, was soon challenged. One afternoon, while demonstrating how to properly change a tire, Jane heard a familiar, unwelcome voice. Looking up, he saw Mark standing at the entrance, arms folded, surveying the scene with undisguised scorn. "I can't believe you actually turned this place into a school," Mark scoffed, stepping inside. Jane sighed, putting down his wrench, bracing himself for more criticism. Mark insisted he wasn't criticizing, merely observing Jane's project. He gestured dismissively towards the trainees. "Do you really think," Mark sneered, "these kids can become professional mechanics? You're dreaming." Jane didn't engage directly. Instead, he glanced towards Hoyoung, one of the most diligent trainees, who was carefully reassembling brake parts according to the recent lesson, his brow furrowed in concentration. Turning back to Mark, Jane spoke with a quiet confidence that surprised even himself. He stated simply that while he couldn't predict their futures, he was, at the very least, giving them a chance. Mark laughed derisively, repeating his prediction that Lisa would eventually abandon the project, leaving Jane back where he started. He turned and left, leaving an uncomfortable silence in his wake. Jane knew he couldn't win over everyone, especially those determined to resist change, but Mark's words, sharp and cynical, couldn't extinguish the growing conviction that this new direction, this investment in people, was fundamentally right. The path forward was becoming clearer, even as the opposition made its presence known. The initial months following the vocational training center's inception saw a period of encouraging progress, a quiet blossoming of the potential Lisa had envisioned and Jane had cautiously embraced. Despite the lingering skepticism in some corners of the neighborhood and Mark's persistent cynicism, a positive energy began to permeate the Jane Auto Service Center. The young trainees, initially hesitant and awkward, started to find their footing. Under Jane's patient guidance, they moved from basic tasks like identifying tools and changing oil to more complex procedures like engine checks and troubleshooting minor issues. Their eagerness, combined with Jane's practical instruction, yielded tangible results. Laughter occasionally mingled with the sounds of wrenches turning and engines humming. For Jane, witnessing their growing competence and confidence provided a profound sense of fulfillment far exceeding that of simply running a successful repair shop. He was not just fixing cars, he was helping to shape futures, offering a pathway that hadn't existed for him or, as he would later learn, for others like Mark's father. This burgeoning success, however, seemed only to sharpen the resentment of those resistant to change. The fragile peace was shattered one morning. Arriving early to open the center, Jane was stopped dead in his tracks by a sight that sent a surge of hot anger through him. The large front window, newly installed during the renovation, was smashed. Worse, crude red paint had been splattered across the pristine sign bearing the center's name. Scrawled across it in bold, hateful letters was a single word: traitor. There was little doubt in Jane's mind about the likely source of this violation. Mark's earlier warnings and accusations, his bitter resentment of Jane's partnership with the wealthy outsider, echoed loudly. To the staunch traditionalists, Jane wasn't improving his lot or helping the community. He had betrayed his roots, sold out to corporate interests, and created something offensively out of place. Just as he was processing this initial shock, one of the trainees, Hoyoung, came running from the back, his face pale with distress. "Teacher Jane," he gasped, "big trouble. Someone trashed the backyard training area." Jane rushed back to find a scene of calculated destruction. The practice cars they used for training had been damaged, windshields cracked, tires slashed. Tool sets were overturned, their contents scattered across the floor, some tools deliberately broken. The message was clear: the opposition wasn't content with verbal mockery, it had escalated to malicious sabotage. A cold fury settled over Jane as he surveyed the damage. This was a direct attack not just on him, but on the trainees, on the very idea of offering these young people a chance. The initial impulse was frustration, How could he prove who did this? One trainee suggested reporting it to the police, but Jane sighed, knowing that without concrete evidence, little could be done against anonymous vandalism. Just then, Lisa's familiar SUV pulled up. Taking in the scene, the broken glass, the scattered tools, the dejected faces of the trainees, her expression hardened. Her usual composure was replaced by a steely seriousness. After hearing what had happened, she didn't hesitate. She would handle involving the authorities, possessing resources and influence Jane lacked. But her immediate question to Jane was crucial: what are you going to do? Looking at the wreckage, then at the hopeful yet anxious faces of his trainees, Jane felt his resolve solidify. He met Lisa's gaze, his voice firm. I won't back down. The following days were dedicated to repair and resilience. Lisa provided the necessary funds to replace the broken glass and damaged equipment without delay. Jane, alongside his determined trainees, worked tirelessly to clean up the mess, repair the practice vehicles, and reorganize the workshop. The act of sabotage, intended to demoralize and disrupt, paradoxically seemed to strengthen their collective spirit. But Jane understood that physical repairs were not enough. He needed to address the underlying hostility and mistrust within the community, the sentiment that allowed such acts to occur, even if perpetrated by only a few. He initiated a proactive strategy. He began personally inviting some of the older, more traditional mechanics from the neighborhood, men like Mark, initially, to visit the center. He didn't try to convert them, but simply showed them the new equipment, explained the training methods, and transparently shared his goals. Some refused outright, clinging to their suspicions. Others, however, displayed a grudging curiosity, perhaps seeing the potential benefits or simply respecting Jane's direct approach. Simultaneously, he expanded the center's services, offering basic car maintenance and repairs at significantly reduced rates for families in the neighborhood facing financial hardship. This wasn't just charity, it was a strategic move to demonstrate the center's commitment to the community it served, directly countering the narrative that he was creating an exclusive, high-end facility irrelevant to local needs. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the tide began to turn. The open hostility lessened, replaced by wary observation or even quiet acknowledgement. Fewer customers questioned the modern setup, more people seemed willing to give the revitalized center a chance. The narrative was shifting. It was during this period of fragile progress that Mark reappeared. One evening, while Jane was organizing the ledgers, Mark walked in. Jane looked up, expecting another round of accusations, but Mark's usual sneer was absent. He pulled up a chair, his demeanor subdued, and simply said, "Let's talk." After looking around the now orderly workshop, taking in the signs of ongoing training and repair work, Mark let out a long sigh. "I was wrong," he admitted, the words seemingly difficult but sincere. Jane, surprised, waited for him to continue. Mark repeated his admission, his voice deeper this time. He confessed he had viewed Jane as a traitor, someone abandoning his peers for personal gain. But watching the center operate, seeing the genuine effort to teach young people, and perhaps influenced by Jane's outreach, he now understood. "You are really helping this community," Mark acknowledged. He then revealed a personal connection. His own father had been a mechanic who, like Jane before the investment, had worked hard his entire life but never had the opportunity to grow or improve his circumstances. Mark admitted his resistance stemmed partly from being stuck in old ways, afraid of the change Jane represented. Jane listened, recognizing the shared background but different responses to hardship. He extended his hand, offering Mark a place at the center if he truly wanted to be part of the change. A flicker of Mark's old gruffness returned, mixed with relief, as he took Jane's hand, suggesting Jane could still learn a thing or two from him. It was a moment of reconciliation, transforming a key opponent into an unexpected ally. With Mark now occasionally lending his experience to help manage the trainees, the center felt more integrated, more stable. Seeing this progress, Lisa subtly floated the idea of future expansion, hinting at replicating the model elsewhere. But just as one source of conflict subsided, another, more insidious threat emerged. Jane received an anonymous, threatening phone call warning him to be careful. He knew not everyone shared Mark's change of heart. And then, late one night as he was leaving the garage, he was confronted directly by Peter, another local figure known for vehemently opposing the changes Jane and Lisa had brought. Peter, flanked by a few others in the darkness, openly mocked Jane, accusing him of trying to take over the neighborhood with his fancy operation. He dismissed the training initiative, demanding Jane quit before things got worse. Jane stood his ground, refusing to be intimidated, but the encounter left him deeply uneasy. Peter wasn't like Mark, his opposition felt rooted in a deeper malice and jealousy. His unease proved justified. Arriving at the center one morning soon after, Jane found the door lock broken. Steeling himself, he pushed the door open to a scene of utter chaos far worse than the previous vandalism. The interior had been ransacked. Tools were not just scattered but deliberately broken. New, expensive diagnostic machines were damaged. Paperwork was strewn everywhere. Oil and grease had been intentionally spilled across the clean tiled floors. It was a comprehensive, vicious attack designed to cripple the operation. Hoyoung and the other trainees arrived, their faces falling in shock and anger. Mark, arriving shortly after, surveyed the destruction grimly, immediately suspecting Peter. Lisa was notified and arrived promptly, her expression hardening into cold fury. She declared her intention to involve the police again, this time determined to pursue the matter vigorously, leveraging her resources to find evidence and ensure accountability. Seeing the devastation and the distress of his team, Jane knew this was a critical test. Addressing the trainees, his voice ringing with conviction, he declared they would not be scared away. "We'll fix everything," he announced, "and we will move on." His words met with determined nods. The attack, meant to break them, instead forged an even stronger sense of unity and purpose as they began the arduous task of rebuilding once more, together. The collective resolve displayed by Jane, his trainees, and now even his former rival Mark, proved formidable in the face of Peter's destructive malice. The rebuilding process after the devastating sabotage was undertaken with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. Lisa, true to her word, ensured the necessary financial resources were available immediately, replacing broken equipment and repairing structural damage. The police investigation, spurred by her influence, proceeded in the background, sending a clear message that such actions would not be tolerated without consequence. Within a month, the Jane Auto Service Center was not merely restored, it felt stronger, its team bonded by the shared adversity they had overcome. Peter's attempt to break their spirit had, ironically, only solidified their commitment. The trainees worked with increased diligence, Jane taught with even greater passion, and Mark, now a fully integrated part of the team, offered his gruff but valuable expertise. It was during this period of recovery and renewed focus that Lisa arrived one afternoon with news that marked a significant turning point. With a broad smile, she announced she had finalized a partnership agreement with a major national car manufacturing company. This corporate giant, impressed by the center's innovative model and its focus on practical skills training, wanted to collaborate. The partnership meant a substantial influx of resources, funding, advanced training modules, potentially even access to newer vehicle models for practice. More importantly, it established a formal pipeline for graduates. The company committed to offering promising job opportunities as entry-level mechanics within their extensive dealership and service network to trainees who successfully completed Jane's program. This transformed the center from a local community initiative into a recognized feeder program for the automotive industry, offering its disadvantaged students not just skills, but a clear, tangible pathway to stable employment and a brighter future. Jane was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this achievement. What had started as an unexpected act of kindness had evolved into a venture recognized by corporate leaders. He expressed his profound gratitude to Lisa, acknowledging that such success would have been unimaginable without her vision and support. Lisa simply deflected the praise, reminding him that it was his character and dedication that made the partnership possible. She had merely helped him realize his potential. In the subsequent months, the training center flourished as never before. The corporate partnership brought enhanced credibility and resources. Word spread through the neighborhoods about the quality of the training and, crucially, the real job prospects it offered. Applications surged. The workshop buzzed with activity day in and day out, the sounds of engines being tuned, tools clanking, instructors guiding trainees, and the low murmur of focused learning. New faces arrived each week, young men and women bringing with them a potent mixture of hope and determination, eager to seize the opportunity the center represented. Jane, looking around the vibrant, busy space, often had to pause and reflect on how far things had come from the quiet, often lonely days in his old, dilapidated garage. The self-doubt that had once plagued him was replaced by a growing confidence, not just in himself, but in the mission they were pursuing. Life also took an unexpected turn for Jane's former antagonist, Peter. The police investigation, combined with the community's shifting allegiance towards Jane's increasingly respected center, had consequences. Peter's own traditional repair business, already struggling perhaps due to his resistance to adapt, suffered significantly as customers drifted away, disillusioned by his actions or simply attracted by the quality service and positive energy emanating from Jane's operation. One morning, a figure appeared hesitantly at the entrance of the bustling training center. It was Peter. The contrast with his previous appearances was stark. Gone was the arrogance and aggression. He looked tired, defeated, and considerably humbled. He awkwardly asked Jane if he had a moment. Jane, initially surprised and wary, agreed to speak with him. Peter, looking around at the thriving center with an expression of mingled confusion and perhaps regret, admitted he needed a job. He explained bluntly that his business had failed, his customers had left, and people now believed in what Jane was doing. He had nothing left. Jane stared at the man who had actively tried to destroy everything he was building. The urge to turn him away, to savor a moment of victory, might have been natural. But looking at Peter's evident desperation, Jane saw not just an enemy, but perhaps a reflection of the desperation that can drive bad decisions. He thought of his own past struggles, the feeling of being trapped without options. Extending a hand, Jane made an offer that surprised Peter even more than his request. He told Peter that while he hadn't forgotten his actions, he believed everyone deserved a chance to start over. If Peter was genuinely willing to change and learn, Jane would teach him, offering him a spot as a trainee. Peter, visibly stunned but grasping the lifeline, accepted, acknowledging he didn't expect immediate forgiveness, only an opportunity. And so, the man who had been his most bitter opponent became one of the newest students learning the basics under Jane's tutelage, a powerful symbol of redemption and the center's widening impact. The success of the original center spurred the next phase of growth, expansion. Following through on Lisa's earlier suggestion, they identified promising locations in other underserved areas of New York. With Lisa handling the financial logistics and Jane overseeing the technical setup and training protocols, they replicated the model. Old warehouses were purchased and remodeled. Mark, fully embracing his role, stepped up to become one of the lead instructors, traveling between the original center and the new branches, sharing his decades of experience. He often marveled, half joking with Jane, that he never imagined himself becoming a teacher, a sentiment Jane shared. Watching new groups of eager young faces begin their training at these additional locations, Jane felt a profound sense that they were truly building something significant, extending the reach of opportunity. One evening, sitting in his small office at the original center, Jane looked out at the bustling workshop floor, trainees working diligently, Peter focused on a task, Mark patiently instructing a small group. Lisa entered, observing the scene with a satisfied smile. She asked Jane if he finally believed in himself and the impact he was having. Jane smiled back, shaking his head slightly, admitting he still found the extent of their success somewhat surreal. Lisa reminded him of her initial belief, that he was more than just a mechanic, but someone capable of changing lives. Jane reflected on the journey, acknowledging how profoundly it had changed both of them. When he asked her, "What's next?" Lisa simply shrugged, suggesting possibilities ranging from becoming president of a whole chain of training centers to finding entirely new goals. For the moment, Jane felt grounded, wanting to focus on consolidating what they had built, but the seed of future potential had been planted. Leaving the office later that night, looking up at the vast night sky, Jane understood his journey was far from over. He had started as a poor mechanic trapped by circumstance, but an unexpected opportunity, rooted in a simple act of honesty, had completely redefined his path and allowed him to positively impact the lives of countless others. He was no longer just Jane the mechanic, he was Jane the leader, the mentor, the creator of opportunity, fully embracing the way forward, wherever it might lead. Jane's remarkable evolution, from a solitary mechanic laboring in a dimly lit alley to a respected leader guiding multiple thriving vocational training centers, represents more than just an inspiring narrative of personal success. His journey, forged in the grit of daily work and tested by significant adversity, serves as a powerful testament to several fundamental values and offers profound lessons applicable far beyond the confines of an auto repair shop. It demonstrates how core principles of character, combined with the courage to embrace unexpected chances, can fundamentally reshape not only one's own destiny but also the fabric of a community. Examining the arc of his transformation reveals enduring insights into the nature of opportunity, the necessity of resilience, and the often underestimated impact of simple human decency. Perhaps the most foundational lesson illuminated by Jane's story is the potent, catalytic power of authenticity and kindness. His initial interaction with Lisa, the moment that set the entire chain of events in motion, was defined by his unwavering integrity. Faced with a wealthy, seemingly uninformed customer, he could easily have inflated the cost of the repair or exaggerated the problem. Instead, he performed the necessary work honestly and charged a fair price, expecting nothing more than the standard payment for his labor. It was this simple act of decency, this refusal to compromise his ethical standards for potential gain, that captured Lisa's attention and respect. This cornerstone event underscores a vital principle: genuine kindness and unwavering authenticity, practiced without expectation of reward, can create ripples that open doors to opportunities far greater than any short-term gain achieved through expediency or deceit. It reminds us that character is often the currency that unlocks true potential, sometimes in the most unexpected ways, demonstrating that small acts rooted in integrity can indeed change a life. Furthermore, Jane's experience vividly illustrates the critical necessity of courage and perseverance in the face of inevitable challenges. The path from accepting Lisa's offer to establishing successful training centers was fraught with obstacles. He encountered immediate skepticism from his peers, represented initially by Mark's cynical warnings. As the project grew, this skepticism escalated into outright hostility and malicious sabotage, acts of vandalism designed to demoralize him and derail his progress. Yet, at each critical juncture, discovering the defaced sign, the trashed training area, the ransacked center, Jane made the conscious choice not to succumb to fear or intimidation. Supported by Lisa and, eventually, by allies like Mark and his dedicated trainees, he chose resilience. He didn't just repair the physical damage, he actively worked to mend community relations and strengthen his position through transparency and service. His journey teaches that meaningful change and significant achievement rarely occur without friction or opposition. True progress demands the courage to stand firm in one's convictions, the perseverance to rebuild after setbacks, and the resilience to navigate the often difficult path toward a worthy goal. Finally, Jane's story serves as a compelling reminder that opportunities, while sometimes presenting themselves unexpectedly, require conscious recognition and the boldness to seize them. The initial check for 50 million won, the subsequent partnership proposal, the idea of becoming a teacher, and later the suggestion to expand, each represented a significant opportunity that pushed Jane far beyond his established comfort zone. His initial reactions were often marked by hesitation and self-doubt, rooted in his humble background and cautious nature. However, guided by Lisa's belief in him and spurred by his own growing sense of purpose, he consistently found the courage to take the leap. He ventured into the unfamiliar world of high finance at the rooftop party, embraced the challenge of leadership and teaching, and ultimately agreed to scale the operation. This highlights that potential often remains dormant until activated by the courage to try something new, to risk the security of the familiar for the possibility of growth and greater impact. Opportunity isn't merely about being lucky, it's about being ready and willing to act when the chance arises. Ultimately, Jane's transformation offers a powerful source of inspiration. It showcases how integrity can lay the foundation for unforeseen possibilities, how resilience can overcome significant adversity, and how courage can unlock latent potential. His journey encourages each of us to reflect on the value of our own authenticity, to find the motivation to pursue our passions with dedication, and to cultivate the strength to persevere through the inevitable difficulties life presents. May his story serve as a reminder that positive change is possible, that opportunities can be created and seized, and that a life dedicated to purpose and service can yield rewards far beyond the material.